Hi there, Guntown Mike here, with a short video showing you how to play Panic Stations, the card game version of Pandora Celeste. At the start of the game, you decide what crew you want to play, and I'm going to take Cargo because I want to show you how his cargo card works. And once you've picked your crew, you're ready to set up the game, and then the way you do this is you lay out the ship deck. Now, the ship deck is a deck of 19 cards labelled 1 to 19, though the card labelled here that doesn't have a big number on the front. And it is different from the crew decks because the ship deck has arrows on the back of the cards, and the crew deck doesn't. You also have 7 locations in the game: the bridge, the galley, the sick bay, cryo chamber, computer room, cargo control, and the cargo shuttle. And the computer room also comes with 3 cards that are stored in the computer room safe. And finally, you also have 3 big nasty cards. These are the classic 3 big nasty monsters from Pandora Celeste. You basically shuffle the 3 big nasties, lay them out randomly in front of you like so, and then having shuffled the ship deck, you set aside 1 card for every player in the game into a starting deck, and you then deal the remaining cards one at a time on top of the big nasties in order to create 3 approximately even piles. And having dealt all of these cards out, you then pile 1 pile on top of the other, with the pile with the most cards on the top and the pile with the least cards on the bottom. And finally, you put the starting deck on top of that, and this is your ship deck for the game. From this ship deck, you now need to lay out the plan of the ship. And you do that by placing ship deck cards in a crossroads on the center of the table, like so, and then arranging the location cards around that crossroads in the configuration shown on the setup diagram in the leaflet that comes with the game. The computer room is also separated from the ship by a locked door token, and the cargo shuttle and bridge are also separated from the ship by airlock tokens, which are laid with their engineering side face up at the start of the game. There are 4 other decks that come in the box, though to be honest with you, deck is a generous description for some of them. The first is 2 cards, told you deck was a generous description, which are the Scuttlebug cards. You set these off to one side in what's known as the Swarm deck, and they will appear if the bug pods ever appear in the ship. What? There are bug pods in the ship? Come on, this is a spaceship survival game. You also have a combat deck, which looks like this on the back and has cards that look like this on the front. You basically shuffle this deck and set it to one side where everyone can basically reach it when they need to. And you also have 3 spare noise cards, which you will need at some point. I'll explain why. And finally, you have an agenda deck. This is a deck of 6 cards which you shuffle, and you deal 1 to each player in the game. If Skins is in the game, you deal him 2, and if he gets a company agenda, he has to take the company agenda, which is why no one ever trusts the company android. And these are basically pick up and deliver cards. You need to find the MacGuffin described on this card, take it into your hand, declare that you have fulfilled your agenda, and once you've fulfilled your agenda, you have the access codes to unlock the airlocks at either end of the front of the ship, and at that point you can get onto the escape vehicles and escape. Finally, you place your crew standee into the cryo chamber and you're ready to play the game. And at the heart of this game is your 7-card deck, which also forms your hand. And you're going to take it in turns, going around the table, playing one card at a time to do what the action symbols say on the card. And those action symbols are described in the symbols quick reference sheet that comes with the game. If the symbols are in separate boxes, you can do one of those actions or the other. You can't do both. If the symbols are in the same box, you can do all of the actions in that box in whatever order you like, and you don't have to do all of the actions. So in this particular case, you could pick up and creep, or you could creep and pick up, or you could just creep. It's entirely up to you. If you've got dual symbols in two different boxes, you pick which pair of symbols you're going to use. And everybody has this, which is a batteries card. When you play this, you play it face up into your discard to take two cards from your discard pile and immediately play one of the two cards that you have picked up. And it's a way of basically getting the action you need out of your discard pile at a point where you need it. And on that note, I guarantee you that at some point during this game, there will be something you want to do and you do not have the action icon to do it, at which point you can always play two cards face down into your discard pile to do anything that is on the symbols quick reference sheet. You look at the color coding of the thing that you want to do, and you take a spare noise card of the same color, and you place it on top of those two cards to say that those two cards are making that noise. And the reason that you do this is that we are going to come to a point where the nasties are going to have a nasty action round. The nasties are the alien monsters in this game. When the nasties have a nasty action round, you are basically going to look at all of the face-up cards in your discard pile. Face-up discard pile cards make noise. And whoever has the most red noise cards in their discard pile is the first target that the nasties are going to zero in on. But we'll get to that in a little while. First of all, you need to start moving through the ship. And in order to do that, you play a movement card. Every card that has a horizontal arrow on it is a movement card. And the number of arrowheads on that horizontal arrow is the number of cards that you can move across through the ship. So this is a run 3 card. If I played it for movement, I would play it face up into my discard pile like so, and I would start moving. Now, I can only move from one card to another across the narrow end of a card. So I can go from the cryo chamber into the bottom of the crossroads here, and I can go from the bottom of the crossroads into the center of the crossroads like so, because I'm crossing the narrow ends of cards. I could not go from the cryo chamber into the right hand crossroads, nor could I go from the bottom of the crossroads into the sick bay, because I would be crossing long ends of cards. And each of the ship cards, on the back of each of the ship cards, is a set of arrows, which just reminds you that those are the viable crossing points. I can go from the crossroads into this card or into this card because there is a narrow end of another card that I am crossing. So I just move on through. Every time I enter a face down room, I flip over the card to see what it is. At this point, I can opt to stop or keep on moving, depending on what I've discovered. And in this case, this is a stun gun, which looks quite useful to me. So I want to stop so that I can pick it up on a later turn. Now, if I was playing with more than one player here, then at this point, I might want to pick that card up before someone else has their turn. What I can therefore do is make a follow-on action. And a follow-on action means that I play any card face down to say that I'm following on, and then I can play another card from my hand face up. In this case, I'm going to play Pick Up and Creep, which allows me to pick up that card and creep out of the room into another room. I replace the card that I've picked up with a card from the top of the ship deck, and it goes face down into the room that I've just emptied. Because I've ended my turn without revealing any new cards, without turning a card over on the ship or anything else. I have to draw the top card of the ship deck and I have to place it in the room that I ended my turn in. I have revealed a big nasty on the top of the ship deck. And because I've revealed a big nasty on the top of the ship deck, that is going to trigger a nasty action round at the end of my turn. There are three ways of triggering a nasty action round. One is by revealing a big nasty at the top of the ship deck. The other is by passing. And the third is by playing a you first card, which makes any crew member you play it on the first target and immediately triggers a nasty action round with them as the first target. Ooh, nasty. So what I do then is I take this big nasty card and I am going to spawn this big nasty somewhere on the ship. I draw the top card of the combat deck and I look at the card and I look at the name that's on the card. In this case, it says cryo for cryo chamber. So this big nasty has spawned in the cryo chamber. Emerging from behind one of the cryopods is a giant monster bug. This monster bug is now going to have a nasty action round. When a nasty action round happens, you activate a number of nasties equal to the number of crew in the game, unless you're playing solo, at which point you activate 2 nasties. You also have this little token, which is the active player marker, which basically you pass around the table as each person takes their turn. And at the top of the active player marker, there is a little symbol which basically tells you whether it's a little nasty action round or a big nasty action round. If it's a little nasty action round, then you activate nasties from the smallest to the biggest. And in this case, I would only activate the first 2. If it's a big nasty action round, you activate the nearest big nasty to the first target, and then the second nearest big nasty to the first target, and you only start activating little nasties if you run out of big nasties. As it is, I only have 1 active nasty in the game at the moment, which is the monster bug. So that monster bug is going to come after me. How does it operate? Well, we look on the back of the rules booklet that comes with the game at the Xeno data log, and we look for the monster bug in the Xeno data log, and it basically says that it's going to move 5 towards the first target and attack the first non-bug that it encounters, and that we're going to reduce the monster bug's combat by 2 for every room it passes through to reach its target. So the monster bug is basically going to move 1, 2 to get to me, which means that it's attacking me with a combat of -4, and the monster bug's combat is its hits. But before I fight the monster bug, I've got a stun gun, and I can play this stun gun before a fight to try and stun the thing that's attacking me so that it doesn't attack me. The only problem is I've got to flip a card, and if I score anything but a 4, it's going to not stun the monster bug, because the monster bug is a big nasty and big nasties are only stunned by a 4. So I've got a very, very small chance of this working. Usually what I would do is, because it's a tool, I would play it into my discard pile like so to use the tool. But because I am cargo, I can play my special use tool card. And I can play that card to use the tool without discarding it. So I can use the stun gun and still keep it in my hand for later, which is not necessarily a bad idea. So I now flip a card. Yeah, I scored 0. That is not enough to stun a big nasty. And so the monster bug is going to attack me. As I say, it's got 8 hits, which means it's got a combat of 8. Its special ability is it's going to reduce my combat by 1. So it's also reducing its combat by 2 for every room it moves through. So it's 8, 6, 4. It's attacking me for 4 plus up to 4 from the combat deck. At this point, I have a choice. I can either fight or I can flight. If I fight, I have to play cards from my hand that have fist icons or dodge icons. And I can also play any weapon from my hand that gives me plus combat. If I play flight, I can play cards from my hand that have movement icons on them, and every movement arrow gives me +1 combat, plus every card I play gives me another +1 combat, plus dodge gives me +3 combat. Well, to be perfectly frank, I have no fight cards in my hand at the moment, so I'm probably going to try and run away. I'm going to play flight. It's currently got 4 plus a potential another 4, that's 8. I now start playing cards from my hand to try to beat 8. I can play this card here, which gives me 1, 2 plus the card 3 combat. I can play this card here, which gives me 1, 2 plus the card another 3 combat, that's 6. But it's still, I've got a potential of 8 that I've got to beat. But what I also have in my hand is this card, my batteries card. So I can play my batteries card to draw any 2 cards from my discard that have not already been played into the combat and play any of them into the combat. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw back my pickup and creep card, and I'm also going to draw back my fight or flight card, and I'm choosing flight, so I'm playing that for another 3 movement arrows, +1 for the card is 4, so that's 4, 7, 10. I flip the nasty action card. He scored 4 plus 2 is 6. 10 beats 6, so I have managed to run away. I flee into another room without being hit by this nasty. When I go into that other room, I immediately turn over the card for that other room. Oh joy, I've just exposed a bunch of bug pods sitting right in front of the computer room. Those bug pods do not do anything when I enter the room, because the way these films work, whatever is nasty is in the room never reacts when you enter a room. It's only when you try and leave the room and make some noise that it attacks you, but we'll get to that in a minute. So that is at the end of my combat round. The final thing I do is I look at the combat card that was drawn, and I take a look at the number on the top of the card, the recovery number. That recovery number is 2. And that allows me to recover the bottom 2 cards of my discard pile. I have just taken 2 hits. It's inflicted 2 hits on me. My cards are my hits. I can opt to lose cards from my hand, or I can opt to lose cards from my discard, and I can lose any cards I like from my discard, which, if any of you have played the core game, you know that it's different in the core game. This little bug has got a combat of 1 plus 2 is 3, 6 beats 3, so I blow away this scuttlebug. If this was a little nasty that had come from the ship deck, it would go face down in the bottom of the ship deck like so. As it is, it's spawned by the bug pods, so it goes back into the spawn deck and it can spawn again at a later date. I have to reshuffle the combat deck because the card that I just drew had R for reshuffle on it. If I move out of this room, then I am going to trigger those bug pods. And those bug pods are going to spawn one of these scuttlebugs in their room. I don't want to trigger those bug pods, so I need to creep out of that room. And at this point, I can play a pick up and creep card, and that pick up and creep card allows me to creep out of the room. And because I have crept out of the room, making very little noise, I do not trigger the bug pods. They do not spawn a scuttlebug. To unlock a door, I basically have to play an unlock action, which I have just done. This unlock action says unlock and move. I unlock this door, and in the card game, I basically place that lock onto the ship's safe. So the door to the computer room is now permanently open, unlocked, but the ship safe is still locked. If I move out of this room, then I am going to trigger those bug pods. And those bug pods are going to spawn one of these scuttlebugs in their room. I opt to pass. At that point, I can basically draw back up to a hand size of 7. So I can replenish my hand from anywhere in my discard pile with cards that are going to be useful to me. So because I've passed, spare noise also now goes away. You will notice that the rest of my cards in my discard remain the way they were. And this is the noise that I am now making. You will notice that because you can pick cards up and take them into your hand size can be larger than 7 until you pass, at which point you basically are drawing back up to 7 cards unless you've already got more than 7 cards in your hand. But there isn't really a hand limit, there's just a replenish limit when you pass. When you pass, that triggers another nasty action round. So passing can be a problem. However, the rules state that you can never have more than one nasty action round in a row. I will then play the engineering card to turn this over like so. And I've just discovered that it's going to take a move to action to get onto the bridge through the airlock, because this flips over to a move to icon. I've got onto the bridge. My turn ends, I have to reveal a card. I reveal this card. It is a spider bug, but it does not go onto the bridge. If you read what the bridge card says, if you draw a card at the end of your turn, flip a combat card and place the drawn card in the room that it names. In other words, this spider bug does not spawn on the bridge. Instead, it spawns in the galley. So it is there. I now have to play these icons in order to power up the bridge and escape. At this point, the bridge is taken off and I am in what's known as the Final Showdown. Right now, I can play an unlock action to try and flush those nasties out of the airlock before I do the final climactic fight. I basically shuffle these cards, I flip a card for each one of those nasties. If it is a 1 to 3, then they are flushed. If it is a 4 or a 0, they are not flushed. The monster bug flushes out the airlock. The trophy hunter does not flush out of the airlock. At this point, I am in the Final Showdown. If I have any cards left in my hand, I can play any card I like to give me +1 combat, regardless of whether it's got a combat symbol on it or not. And if it's got a combat symbol on it, I can play it for its combat. So, for instance, the Fight or Flight fist card would give me 3 for the fist plus 1 for a combat in this final showdown only. I have to defeat the monster and push it out the back of the ship, otherwise I lose. That's it. That's how you play Panic Stations, the Pandora Celeste card game. If you've ever played Pandora Celeste before, you will recognize that it gives you the feel of the game, but in a much more pared down form. You don't get 17 agendas, you only get 6. You don't get any emergency protocols that you have to shut down before the ship kills you or worse. And you're only playing in the front of the ship, so you don't get to experience the delights of the back of the ship and the cargo base. You also only get 4 core characters, though you can, of course, buy any crew add-ons and add them into the game to give you a bit more variety. If you'd like to buy a copy of the game, you can either get it online at our Gun Tower Games store or come and find us at any major UK convention. Price £20. Until then, keep out of those dark corners.